Physiology metabolism refers to the series of chemical processes that occur in the body to support life. Metabolism includes two main aspects. Anabolism, the process of forming larger molecules from smaller ones, requiring energy, and catabolism, the process of breaking down large molecules into smaller ones, releasing energy. These two processes work in a coordinated manner to produce energy, support growth, and ensure optimal body function. 1. Energy metabolism. Energy metabolism is a series of biochemical reactions that the body uses to produce, store, and use energy from food. Energy metabolism, including energy sources. The energy needed by the body comes from carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, which are broken down to produce ATP, adenosine triphosphate, a form of energy that cells can use. The food we consume is converted into these energy molecules through a series of metabolic reactions. Energy sources, including 1. Carbohydrates, namely, the main source of body energy. Carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, which is used directly by cells to produce ATP through the processes of glycolysis and cellular respiration. 2. Fat, namely, hydroxylated into fatty acids and glycerol, which are then used in the beta oxidation process to produce ATP. 3. Protein, namely, digested into amino acids that can be used for body protein synthesis or converted into energy through deamination and used in the citric acid cycle, Krebs cycle. B. Main metabolic pathways, which include 1. Glycolysis, namely, the process of breaking down glucose, 6 carbons, into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, 3 carbons. This process takes place in the cytoplasm and produces a small amount of ATP and NADH. 2. Citric acid cycle, Krebs cycle, namely, after glucose is converted into pyruvate. Pyruvate is converted into acetyl-CoA, which enters the citric acid cycle in the mitochondria to produce ATP, NADH, and FADH2. 3. Electron transport chain, namely, NADH and FADH2 produced from the citric acid cycle carry electrons to the mitochondria, where the energy from these electrons is used to produce ATP in a process called oxidative phosphorylation. 4. Beta oxidation, namely, fatty acids are broken down into 2 carbon units called acetyl-CoA, which then enter the citric acid cycle to produce energy. C. Metabolism regulation. The body's metabolic processes are regulated by various hormones that affect the use and storage of energy, including 1. Insulin, namely, produced by the pancreas. Insulin stimulates cells to absorb glucose from the blood and store it as glycogen in the liver and muscles. Insulin also facilitates fat synthesis. 2. Glucagon, namely. This hormone is also produced by the pancreas and works in contrast to insulin. Glucagon increases blood glucose levels by stimulating the breakdown of glycogen in the liver into glucose, glycogenolysis. 3. Adrenaline, namely, produced by the adrenal glands. Adrenaline stimulates the mobilization of energy from fat and glycogen reserves in times of stress or rapid energy needs, e.g. during exercise or acute stress. 4. Cortisol, namely, stress hormone that increases gluconeogenesis, formation of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, and also mobilizes fatty acids. 2. Carbohydrate metabolism. Carbohydrates are the body's main source of energy, especially for the brain and muscles. The following are the stages in carbohydrate metabolism. 1. Carbohydrate digestion and absorption, namely, consumed carbohydrates are broken down into monosaccharides, especially glucose, through digestion in the digestive tract. Glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream and distributed throughout the body. 2. Glycolysis, namely, glucose is broken down in the cell cytoplasm into pyruvate. Glycolysis produces a small amount of ATP, as well as NADH, which is used in the electron transport chain to produce more ATP. 3. Glycogenesis and glycogenolysis, namely, excess glucose is stored as glycogen in the liver and muscles through the process of glycogenesis. When the body needs energy, glycogen is broken down back into glucose through glycogenolysis. 4. Gluconeogenesis, namely, the process of forming glucose from non-carbohydrate molecules, such as amino acids and lactate, which occurs mainly in the liver. 3. Fat metabolism. Fat is a very efficient source of energy, providing more ATP per gram than carbohydrates. The process of fat metabolism involves the following stages. 1. Fat digestion, namely, consumed fat is processed into fatty acids and glycerol through digestion in the small intestine and absorbed into the bloodstream. 2. Beta oxidation, namely, fatty acids are broken down in the mitochondria to produce acetyl-CoA, which is then used in the citric acid cycle to produce ATP. 3. Ketogenesis, namely, when carbohydrate intake is low, for example on a low-carbohydrate diet or fasting, the body converts fatty acids into ketone bodies, especially acetoacetate, acetone, and beta-hydroxybutyrate, which are used as alternative energy sources by the brain and other tissues. 4. Protein metabolism. Protein is used by the body to build and repair tissue and for the synthesis of hormones and enzymes. However, when the body lacks carbohydrates or fat, protein can be converted into energy. Protein metabolism, including 1. Protein digestion and absorption, namely, protein is broken down into amino acids through digestion, then absorbed into the bloodstream and used for various body functions. 2. Protein synthesis, namely, amino acids are used for protein synthesis in the body, both for growth and repair of body tissue. 3. Deamination, namely, the process of removing amino groups from amino acids, which changes them into compounds that can be used in energy production or stored as glucose. 4. Gluconeogenesis, namely, some amino acids that are not used for protein synthesis can be converted into glucose through gluconeogenesis. 5. Energy metabolism cycle. Every cell in the body, especially muscle and brain cells, requires a constant supply of energy in the form of ATP. The energy metabolism cycle leads to the production of ATP, which is used by the body for various biological functions, such as muscle contraction, protein synthesis, and maintaining ion balance. This process involves the interaction between glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids, all of which are converted into ATP in the cell's mitochondria. 6. Factors affecting metabolism, including 1. Physical activity, namely, exercise increases the body's energy needs and affects the metabolic rate, increasing the use of fat and carbohydrates for energy. 2. Age, namely, the metabolic rate tends to slow with age, due to loss of muscle mass and decreased physical activity. 3. Genetics, namely, genetic factors can affect how efficiently the body processes energy from food. 4. Hormones, namely, hormones such as insulin, glucagon, adrenaline, and thyroid greatly affect the body's metabolism, both in storing and using energy. 5. Food and diet, namely, the type of food consumed affects how the body uses energy. For example, a high-protein diet can stimulate higher energy expenditure due to the thermogenesis effect of food. 7. Conclusion. Metabolic physiology is the basic process that allows the body to obtain, store, and use the energy needed for life. These processes involve a variety of complex biochemical pathways that are influenced by internal and external factors, including hormones, physical activity, and diet. Through coordinated metabolic regulation, the body is able to maintain homeostasis and support growth, repair, and overall body function.